everyone, and welcome to the Contact Center Show. I'm your host, Justin Robbins, and we are in a series of conversations where we are talking to business leaders about the challenges and opportunities for contact center leaders today. I am really looking forward to my guest for this conversation, and it's Matt Dixon, COO of Eclipse Telecom. Matt, I'm going to have you share a little bit about yourself, but one of the things that I love is that you've got a background in building and leading these types of functions, and now today you're helping organizations solve a whole bunch of challenges, and I'm excited to have some conversations with you. Here's where I want to jump in, and here's the topic that we're going to go after today, and it's addressing the thing that's showing up everywhere. Everybody seems to have an opinion on it, and it's what's happening with artificial intelligence inside of the contact center. And Matt, I know you contributed to something with the Forbes Council recently and weighed in on some things. I'm going to have you to share some info on that. But before we tackle all of that, Matt Dixon, welcome to the Contact Center Show. How would you tell a little bit about your background and what you do today?
Well, first, I really appreciate you having me on. So, I guess what haven't I done in my background? I've kicked around in a lot of places. I've been part of big corporate America for a while. Probably the most, I won't say relevant experience. I've been managing contact centers and technology for a long time. But right before joining Eclipse, I was at Stericycle Communication Solutions. So we are a division within Stericycle focused on the patient experience. 3 SaaS platforms, a contact center, 2 million calls a year. 1 million of those were scheduling, really complex scheduling calls. Across those 3 SaaS platforms, we were doing about 200,000 digital interactions a day. So we were powering parts of that patient journey for 8 of the top 10 largest health systems in the country. I ran that for about 3 years until it was divested of. Proud to say, or happy to say, within that 3-year period, we really were recognized for a lot we were doing. Myself and my team, of course, included Frost & Sullivan Award, Global Disruptor Award. Somehow I managed to become a healthcare communicator of the year during the pandemic, which I don't know how that happens because all you talked about were vaccines, but here we are today. As you mentioned, I've kind of flipped my career over to the consulting side, and to your point, trying to help companies learn from both my technology and CX background how to better tackle some of these challenges with the intersection of those two being at the forefront of everybody's mind. I mean, what it takes to be a good contact center leader today is so markedly different than 10 years, 5 years ago, and even 1 year ago. It's changing that fast.
Yeah, it's fascinating for me to see how things are evolving, and what I think is encouraging and exciting for me more than anything is the opportunity it creates for contact center leaders to interact with even more parts of the business, because the need to work collaboratively and cross-functionally could never be greater. The need to understand how technology is designed and deployed could never be greater. And I think the opportunity for us to evolve and mature the humans that are part of our teams and part of our service delivery experience has never been greater. And I know those are just a few very small topics, but here's what I want to do today, Matt. I want to tackle some of those because I think the conversation around AI is actually a conversation around business strategy. I think it's a conversation around technology deployment. I think it's a conversation around even how we do mature and develop our people. And so I want to expose some of the opportunities that those present for us. And here's where I'd love to start. So you're part of the Forbes Council, and I know recently there was an article that looked at 20 challenges with AI and some ways to overcome them. Can you maybe just start of what do you see as maybe one of the greatest challenges that contact center leaders and businesses are facing as they think about artificial intelligence as part of service delivery?
Well, I'm going to throw out a pretty broad one. And again, I don't know if it's, the one I spoke about there specifically, but I'll tell you the broadest problem today. Your customers aren't happy with your AI. I don't know how to put it more plainly than that. So we've seen quite a few surveys coming out. I mean, this is all relatively new, right? So we've seen quite a few surveys coming out, and the results aren't great. So let me, set up some of these numbers just to understand the enormity of the problem we're facing. 80% of customers that use your chatbots say they actually increase their frustration instead of lessening it, and 72% think they're a waste of time. Gartner did a study of right around 6,000 people, and this was relatively new. So we're talking about December for this study. 64% say they prefer companies not to use AI, and 53% say they hate the idea so much they consider switching to a competitor. And 90% of people, according to SurveyMonkey, said they'd rather get their service from a human than a chatbot. Now, those are some alarming numbers, and I'm here to tell you, you should be concerned, but I'm also here to tell you it's not the technology. The technology is not the problem. We talk about this a lot in my business, so much that we call it the 7 deadly sins of AI and automation. And every time I see some of these large or high profile back away from AI, McDonald's recently did it in their drive-thru, right? They backed away from it. We're seeing more and more from this. I can usually do a 1-to-1 to one of the 7 deadly sins, right? I can say, yep, they were doing this. That's, sin number 6, right? So I think that's the biggest challenge today, right? Is I think we all agree AI has this amazing ability or opportunity to make customer experience infinitely better. The way we're choosing to deploy it, unfortunately, is making it worse and not better. So that's the number one challenge. I'm sure we'll solve it here today in about 10 minutes and be on with our day. But I mean, that's the primary challenge today, like we said, is how are you blending technology into your customer service or your customer journey. And that's why I said, what it takes to be a good contact center and more importantly, CX leader today is markedly different than it's ever been.
Yeah, really good perspective, Matt. And there's a couple things that I want to explore. And if I think about what we typically do on the Contact Center show is we're giving tips on how organizations can address some of these challenges. And so I want to dig in, since you mentioned those 7 deadly sins. I want to talk about what those are and maybe look at some ways to overcome them.
Yeah.
But before we do that, I want to underscore 2 things. The first is you highlighted it, and I think we all inherently know this. The technology available to us has never been greater. I think even the lip service around the importance of a great customer experience has never been more profound. And yet, to the point of the studies that you mentioned, it seems that experiences are getting worse, not better. If we look at the consumer index in the United States is on the decline. Again, all of these things, it should be improving, but they're getting worse. And so I want to talk about why that might be. I also want to add one more stat. So I was reading just a couple of weeks ago, a study had come out that was looking at consumer behavior. And what they found is that when a product or service explicitly mentioned the use of AI, consumers were less likely to purchase it. And I think to the point of whether they've had a bad experience already or there's just a general mistrust or misunderstanding of what the tool or technology is, we definitely have our work cut out for us as customer experience professionals, as contact center leaders, as business leaders, to make sure that as we do it, we are planful, we are willing to experiment, and I've talked a lot about the importance of failing fast, but making sure that we don't fail so publicly that we land on the front page. So yeah, really, really interested to have a conversation with you around those things today. So if you're down for it, Matt, maybe we can crank through those 7 things and you share what you're observing, and maybe we each give a tip of something organizations might do to combat against whatever those challenges are.
Absolutely, that sounds perfect. So I don't know if we need a drum roll to get into sin number 1 here, but
I have my drum over there. Oh,
get
Matt,
a drum roll in. And I'll tell you, it fits into perfectly into something you said a moment ago. You said you've never had a greater chance as a contact center leader or CX leader to work with more people with your organization, different people with your organization. We at Eclipse Telecom believe in what we call a Big Ten approach, because we think that's what it takes to be successful in today's customer experience and customer journey, and providing that unbelievable level of experience. The first sin is not considering how automation fits within your brand. I want you to think about how much time is spent as a contact center leader training your people, what your brand voice is, how they communicate with customers to stay within that brand voice. Is your brand voice authoritative? Is it playful? Is it this? Is it that? But then when we go to build our chatbots, marketing's nowhere to be found, who, by the way, are the guardians of your brand voice, right? And should understand it better than anybody. You're not thinking about, you're rolling stuff out of the box, and your brand is going to sound like every other brand that is using that platform, because you're not investing the time, effort, and energy into personalizing that piece of technology to make sure that is reflective of your brand voice. So that's sin number one. I'd say, how do you fix it? A, get more people in the tent. B, when you're selecting these tools, you have to be mindful how you are capable of changing the tone and the tenor of the conversation they have. So we can do a lot of that through prompt engineering. A lot of tools allow for that. But it is certainly something that I don't think is being considered very well. And what we're seeing is this great flattening of brand, in my opinion, where every brand sounds the same, especially when you're interacting with their digital tools.
Yeah, it's fascinating because, to your point, the way that we personalize or even humanize the experiences, I think in a lot of ways, Matt, those will become the differentiating factors for brands, because so much, to the point you just mentioned, is going to be same. It's going to be just not differentiated, but more importantly, I think forgettable. And that to me is the almost worse than a bad experience that you can turn around, is one that's just completely forgotten about. And hear me out. What I'm not saying is that every interaction customers have with your brand are meant to be like wow moments, right? When I check my balance at my bank, I'm not expecting to have my mind blown. But to the point of, if we think about the opportunity ahead of us, I think there is opportunity to make, where it makes sense for us to have it be unique, to have it be differentiated. And I guess one tip that I'd underscore, that you talked about, this idea of bringing more people into the tent, and you said that marketing is nowhere to be found. I think about my own experience as a contact center leader, where in one case, I was on the same floor of the same building, and we couldn't have been further worlds apart. And yet this could be just amazing opportunities to start relationships that it's not about ownership, right? Don't have a fear of marketing's going to come in, and they're like, what they're trying to do is the same thing you are. Create a great experience for the customers that you're serving. And I think having a posture of trust and collaboration, that may be one of the greatest barriers that we have to be willing to overcome to address this, Matt, is just open ourselves to being and inviting more people into the conversation around service design delivery, right? You are still the expert as the contact center leader. Like, you are the expert, but all of us make better decisions, right, if we have the right counsel alongside of us. And I think, to your point, this is a great opportunity to start a conversation with marketing.
All right. Are we ready for sin number 2?
Let's do it.
This one's so bad. By the way, that's how important I think the Big Ten approach is, and your brand is, that I made that sin number 1. But sin number 2 is so bad that we're seeing the White House. It has the attention of the White House. You're going to see some rules very quickly here that are going to target what they call doom loops. The exact quote that came out of the White House here recently was, "Customer experience that is designed to make you give up." Now, a lot of this is around canceling products, certainly, but I see this everywhere. So we call that sin not knowing the location of your exit rows. If you're going to fly, right? We all want to fly when it comes to customer experience. What's the first thing you learn when you get on an airplane? The exit rows are here and here, right? Some people call them doom loops. We all, Justin, I know you'd raise your hand. I'll raise mine. If you've ever yelled agent at a phone or operator, or pounded zero, right? Until your finger was going to fall out. Look, you've got to give people a way out of AI jail. You just have to. And that's really important. And it's not just them raising their hand to say, I'm frustrated. you need to be measuring that experience through that particularly digital interaction, right? There are sentiment analysis that happens on digital interactions, right? When are you saying, hey, this is not going the right direction, this is problematic, I am going to preemptively bring a person in this conversation to provide a better experience than they're getting through our digital tools. So that we think that's a super important one. I think I've already given my tips there, right? Measure your sentiment throughout the interaction. Look for long running interactions is another opportunity to have somebody just kind of peek in there and say, is this going okay? But more importantly, you've got to give people clearly labeled exits. I know, there's some fear that if I do that, then everybody will just default to talking to an agent. Here's the reality. Amazon did a study not too long ago around this. Customers prefer digital tools in a lot of use cases. You hit on one already, like checking your balance at your bank. I don't want to wait to talk to somebody to do that. Give it to me easy, right? Getting the status of your order or where your order, tracking status. Those are all things that people would much, much rather use digital tools for. But again, we talk about why customers are frustrated. You're trying to force them in a paradigm that does not work for them. You're trying to force them to use your digital tools in each and every instance. We need to be smart about when to deploy those tools, when those tools are additive to the process and when they can distract from the process, and understanding that in both design and in real time.
Yeah, Matt, a couple things. So I love that tip. A few things that calls out for me in terms of, advice that I often give when I'm talking to organizations about this very topic. The first is thinking about, you said it's not for every use case. So for me, it's like, hey, when you understand your use case, it's often when you're starting out, it's, hey, how common is this type of interaction? How predictable and how volatile, right? Because ideally, to the point of automation, if you have something that you've got a lot of data around it, it's pretty predictable based off of what you know, and you know that people are likely, or the situation is likely to have a ton of unexpected, kind of moments where emotions could run high or frustration. Could be a really good example. So I think to prevent that loop, part of it is designing for use cases where there's a high likelihood of success. I think that's the first part of it. And you get more sophisticated and have more data, and it can be more predictive. You can increase and expand what those use cases and interaction types look like. I think the second piece to that tip is Matt, as you mentioned, I'm just going to underscore, make it really clear and easy for that customer to pivot to someone who can assist them in real time, and for the automation to recognize that it is no longer capable of helping the person. And then I think the third thing that's just critical to making that transition successful is that context is maintained. That now, once I've gone through that interaction, I'm not having to repeat myself. The person's not having to do a bunch of fact finding, but that is kind of maintained through there.
I'm going to add a bonus tip there, just real quick too. Another reason I think that we're struggling getting AI into the contact center is everybody thinks AI is generative AI. Generative AI is a kind of AI. It is not the only AI. Hallucinations are a problem when you start dealing with generative AI. Stanford did a study recently that found, and I think it makes sense, the longer you make a generative AI talk, the more likely it is to make things up. So this is another example of when you're evaluating and measuring your chatbot, as you said, right? How are you looking at it in real time? There's another risk of letting your chatbot run on for too long. It might start making stuff up. So that's something to think of as well as you go through that process is, hey, they call those terms, right? It says something, I say something. It says something, I say something. You might want to measure your turns and say, we've got too many turns here. We've got two risks. The customer's A, frustrated, not getting what they mean, but B, if we're using generative AI in our chatbot, it just might start making stuff up, right? It's probably time to get a person in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you called out that, hey, not all AI is created equal. And there are lots of cases where your organization is already leveraging AI and probably at scale, and you don't even think twice about it. So love that you called that out, and some of the challenges with generative AI particularly. Next deadly sin. Matt, I'm dying to know, what is it?
You've actually hit on 3, 4, and 5 in your answer here. You didn't even know it, and we're going to touch on those in a little more depth. Number 3 is not locating your circuit breakers. So you hit on this perfectly. Not every use case is a good use case for AI. But more importantly, right, it's one thing to know our exit rows. Sometimes we need to prevent damage before it occurs. Even once you've built your AI for a given use case, there may be times where you don't want to use that AI, even though the customer that's coming in is a fit for that use case. So let me give you a specific example from my own terrible customer experience with a large cable/internet provider. I'm not to say their names, but I've been in this house now that I'm in for about 4 years, had all kinds of trouble. Like they brought in the connectivity. I was not getting the speed I was supposed to get. Just a total nightmare. They brought out technicians more than once. Every time they'd find out the problem was outside of my home. But every time I called to get a problem, they were like, "We will not talk to you until you reset your modem." And they had to send a signal and you had to wait 15 minutes and all this nonsense. And I'm like, guys, your technicians have been to my house 3 times. You know the problem is not my modem. You know the problem is not at my house. Why am I being put in timeout, waiting to talk to a person? And then even when I talked to a person, it was always level 1 tech support, which you just would run through the same script. Did you reboot your modem? Did you check if it was tight? It's like that was a great chance for a circuit breaker to come in and say, hey, we've been to this guy's house 3 times. We know there's problems outside of his house. Let's get him to a person right away and not make him go through this nonsense with resetting his modem and that modem reset signal. But also more importantly, let's get him to level 2 or 3 tech support, right? Let's get him a couple of tiers up because he's been dealing with this problem for a month now. And it's our fault, right? I mean, that was the acknowledgement on their behalf that it was their fault. So you really got to be looking at, as you noted, use case fit up front and what kind of AI you should be using for each use case, not just AI broadly, because generative AI is not the answer to everything. But B, more importantly, even once you built it, there are times you want to say, yeah, we got to get this person out of those AI and automation tools and into the hands of a person just based on their past experience and what's already occurred. So that holistic view of the customer and where they're at within that journey.
Yeah, I love that story, Matt. It reminds me, I was having a conversation with a gentleman named Rick DeLisi. Rick was one of the authors on the Effortless Experience. And Rick was mentioning that when they were doing research for that, they spent a number amount of time in different organizations sitting alongside their contact center teams. And there's one story that he gave me that didn't make it into the book, and I'm able to share. And they were at a large manufacturer of video equipment, cameras, camcorders, right, all those types of things. And what they noticed is that there was one interaction, and he was sitting listening to it, and someone had answered the phone, and they're asking about a zip code. And the guy was calling in because a child's graduation was about to happen. He was having issues with the camcorder. Like, he was minutes away from missing the opportunity, right? This tells you how long ago this was. Like, there wasn't a camcorder in everybody's pocket. Moments away from this happening, and this person like couldn't serve him until he gave his zip code. And he's like, I just need an answer to this question. And the whole reason they were doing that is, they've been having, I guess, a couple issues, and they were trying to see if it was like by region. And so there are these silly things built in that it's like sometimes the process is not serving, and whether it's through automation or whether it's through questions, or it's just silliness. And I encourage us all to check ourselves, right? In terms of like, are we doing what's best for the customer, or are we trying to serve ourselves in this moment? And look, we're all running businesses. We all have bottom lines. Sometimes we get in our own way. And to the point of your story, to the point of the camcorder story, like, let's make sure we're not getting in our own way in terms of serving our customers and ultimately serving ourselves.
Agreed. Absolutely. Are we ready for number 4?
You know I am.
All right. You already kind of hit on this. Actually, 5 is probably more specific to what you hit on, but I'm gonna start with number 4. Not considering agent enablement before automation. And this is going to dovetail into the next one in a moment here. You'll see how these two fit together. The best way to build better experiences is to have better agent interactions. Full stop. Forrester actually did a pretty comprehensive study that talked about how do you get more revenue from your customers by providing better customer experience. And they hit on three things. One, answering all your customers' questions. Makes sense. I'm not buying anything from anybody if they can't answer all my questions, right? First contact resolution was another one that was very critical to enhancing the revenue you get from your customers when you're providing customer experience or through those customer interactions. And then the third one was empowered agents, right? Agents that actually can do something about your problem as opposed to saying, I got to check with a supervisor, I got to check with a lead, we'll get back to you. Like all of that stuff, right? So we've got all these great AI tools. It seems like, to your point, we're so focused on a service to being in service to ourselves, right? Saving the bottom line. I would advise most companies to say, how do you take each of your agents and make them the best agent? This is where agent enablement can get us with some of these AI tools. Broadly, you'll hear them called Agent Assist, Copilot. Microsoft calls it, theirs Copilot. There's all kinds of different names for them, but it's just really that idea that you can get all of your agents performing at the top level through providing them better tools, making it easier for them to get information, providing better real-time coaching. And the other thing that agent enablement layer does for us that's very interesting is a lot of information you need to run your business better holistically lives in the contact center. So when you start to invest in the tools that help people, you're also going to get some lessons learned about how to make your entire company operate better. And I'll give you an example of this. I've had customers where, and this is going back to kind of the healthcare side, I've had customers where by mining that unstructured information, by the way, this is a great use of generative AI, is taking all your unstructured conversations, right, and providing or gaining insights or structure from them. Well, what they were figuring out is, boy, just by tweaking some of our FAQs, we can cut down call volume by 10, 15, 20%. Making this more prominent in our FAQs, bringing it to the top, right? I've had other instances where even things like the way product manuals are written can be altered by what you learn in the contact center. The way you label your product to do something, like how do you reset something, can be better labeled on the product itself by listening to what's happening in the contact center. And that's where generative AI is awesome. It's opening some really fascinating opportunities that we haven't had before, because nobody's going to sit there. You listen to 2 to 3% of your calls at most, and you're listening it for more agent performance than learning about your business. Now we've got all these great tools that are going to let you learn about your business while you're making your agents' lives easier. So I would say maybe think about that first as your first step into AI.
Matt, I almost gave you a standing ovation there. I'm a massive believer in what is coming in terms of maturing and developing our workforce. And you mentioned how it's going to, I think, augment our employees who are serving customers and enable them to achieve more and faster and greater. So I think it is going to expand their potential for impact. I think it's also just enabling us to create new challenges and opportunities for our people, because then the problems that they're going to get to solve are going to be way more nuanced and crazy implications, I think, in terms of how we develop and hire and engage our workforce moving forward. And that's probably a topic for a whole other contact center show, but really, really exciting stuff that I think is happening here. And you're spot on. The tip that I'll add on to this, so we can get to the next sin here, is this means you need to engage your workforce. Like, your employees have incredible ideas and observations and insights. And if you do not have a mechanism to capture the voice of your employees, that is the very best next step for you. It can be as simple as, hey, I'd love for you to send me some feedback at the end of the day. It can be you grabbing coffee with each of your employees and doing one-on-ones. Probably a combination of that plus some. But to Matt's point, and I've done and seen this time and time and time again, your employees who are interacting with your customers every single day, they have so much inside of their minds that can help you just revolutionize your experiences. You just need to tap into it. And I absolutely encourage people to do that, not just for the sake of AI, but for the sake of your business, and kind of unleashing all of its potential.
Yeah, I mean, again, I can't be more excited about the possibility to take all that great unstructured data and use it to make your business better. That's to me the most exciting thing I'm seeing from an AI perspective.
Yeah,
So I think we
absolutely.
can roll right into number 5
Let's
here,
get
which this
there.
one you did speak very specifically to. You didn't even know it. Uh, Too many companies start from the top and not the bottom. So what do I mean by that? They've got this idea of what we should be automating or where we should be using AI. Instead, what we should be doing is making our agents' life better and better and better. And eventually, what you find out, because you talked about earlier, right? You want things that are predictable and not volatile when you're doing this. Well, what's our number one test bed for determining whether our AI is working? Deploy the tools to the agent, and the agents will tell you whether it's working or not. That is your chance to make mistakes where nobody sees them. And the agents are going to say, yeah, this tool is great, but it just doesn't work 20% of the time, because every time this comes up, it just goes off the rails, right? And what you'll find slowly as you make those tools better and better and better, at some point you'll say, for this specific thing, we can do this interaction without the agent, right? And then you'll be able to step the agent back and fully automate that, but still keeping in mind you need your exit rules, still keeping in mind that you need your circuit breakers. But when you start from that bottoms up approach, I think you're going to get infinitely better results than sitting on high and deciding this is the use case, this is where we need to use it, this is how it needs to be used. Again, it just solves for so many problems that we're seeing happen today as far as the right fit for AI, getting it rolled out in a consumer-facing version. All those things can be solved by, again, focusing on deploying those tools within your contact center at first and working your way up until those make sense to roll out directly to your consumers.
Yeah, and to that point, Matt, I see a lot of organizations almost issuing a diagnosis and over-engineering a solution without ever actually understanding what the problem is in the first place. And I think that from the ground level up approach is really, really important. Again, earlier I used the phrase "fail fast." One of the mottos that one of my teams and I just truly embraced for a long time was "Don't let perfection get in the way of progress." And I think with these things, like, we've got a lot of concerns of what could go wrong, that instead of creating really safe sandboxes to iterate and experiment and expose this stuff and figure out what works and what doesn't, we just say, well, we're just going to wait. We're just going to wait for somebody else to do it. It's in some other case. And to your point, like, engaging our team, and whether they're internal use cases or whatever it would be, those are just amazing spots where we can start to engage our workforce, which all of us want to do, and find these use cases that actually prove out, and then we can scale up. So I love it, Matt. I violent agreement with you on that one. We're in the home stretch here. I think we've just got 2 more to go. So what's number 6?
We are number 6 here, not thinking about all the use cases when it comes to AI. A lot of contact center leaders and technology leaders as well, right? So we're seeing, obviously, technology leaders get much more involved into the technology that goes into the contact center. They're not understanding there's a million things you can be doing with AI. They're only focusing on the automation piece. They're only focusing on generative AI. I'll give you a couple things I think that are very, very underrepresented when it comes to how people should be thinking about using AI in their customer journey. One is 100% quality assurance and quality management on all interactions. This is a pipe dream for every contact center leader that now can become a reality, right? You're only getting to 2 to 3% of your calls in all likelihood. It's not a statistically valid sample size, by the way, right? I have a master's in data analytics. One of the first things you learn is pick the right sample size or your results are meaningless. If you're only getting to 2 to 3%, you're doing 1 or 2 agent calls a month. How does that reflective of agent performance, right? And when you're looking at compliance, highly compliant industries like healthcare, like finance, how are you sure that people are doing the right disclaimers or asking the right questions before revealing information on 100% of your interactions, both digital and human led? This is an area where I think everybody could learn a ton by getting 100% QA and QM turned on in their environment using AI to lead the charge. And that doesn't mean you don't do any human-led QA, QM. It just means that you're going to be able to reach 100% where historically you haven't been able to. And the other one I think is a great use case that we touched upon here a little bit ago is mining all that unstructured data that happens in your contact center, understanding the reasons why people are calling you, understanding better where they're frustrated within your customer experience and customer journey. Boy, oh boy, the impact of those tools is very, very far reaching. And I would even argue more important than call deflection that you'd achieve by putting in automation. I think that you would find your business holistically does better if you can just better take that unstructured data that's happening on every one of your calls, every one of your digital interactions, get your hands around that and understand that better. You're gonna find out things about your business that's gonna make it infinitely better pretty quickly. And we just don't see people thinking about that. That's always like an add-on or a tack on to the end of those conversations. It's never where people start. And I think more people should think about starting there as well.
Yeah. I like those examples, Matt, and they make me think of a few questions that I often ask myself in those situations and that I encourage business leaders to ask. And so my tip's going to maybe add some color to what you've talked about there. The first thing is getting really, really clear on what's kind of the most important thing for you to accomplish or go after right now. I think it's really easy for organizations to get distracted by problems as they pop up, right? It's the classic Eisenhower matrix of urgent versus important. Like people are stuck in that all the time of we go after things that are urgent, but we lose sight of the important. The reason why clarifying what you're most kind of focused on accomplishing first is because, Matt, to your point about the unstructured data, I absolutely agree with you. But my concern is now we're going to have all of these insights and we're going to have to ask ourselves of what do we go after first? What do we need to address these things? And I think very quickly can get overwhelmed if we don't have clarity on what are we trying to accomplish? What's the most important problem for us to solve? Because all of those, like, there's another day. Another day is coming that you can go after another problem. You've got to pick one for today. So I think that's the first thing is we've got to get really clear on that bit. But I think the other thing around 100% QA, around unstructured insight, there's two questions I ask myself is, what does this now enable? And if I think about, if I have 100% of my interactions that are getting scored, what does that enable in terms of the way that I can coach and develop and focus on that side of professional development, right? So those types of questions. And then the second piece of what does this imply, right? So I mentioned to the point of the data, it's like, if you then had all of your unstructured data, now you had all those insights, like what does that mean? What is that going to force or challenge? And are we okay with the consequence of that? That I think to the more daunting challenge, Matt, is, gosh, there's going to be really cool stuff that we're going to uncover here. But then are we willing and able and confident and capable to go after what that's going to invite us into?
Yeah, and I think that the challenge there is always the ROI question, right? What's our return on investment for tackling those problems? I think again, having your hands around that unstructured data can give you some information that's going to help make that case. You hit on another one too as well there that I'll double down on. You said, it's going to enable us when we have that 100% QA/QM to do better coaching. There's actually an interesting thing that I'm seeing that I think is a pretty novel use of AI. We spend all this time thinking about how we make our agents perform better. There is now AI that is focused on how to make our team leads and supervisors perform better. Because guess what? What you're going to find is that certain ones of your team leads or supervisors are better at coaching things than others. So you'll find that you're going to have, one of your leads is awesome at coaching empathy, but maybe not as strong at coaching. I don't know. Let me pick something out here. A specific use case to your business, right? Like processing a return or something like that. Well, as you start to use AI and that 100% QA/QM, you'll start to figure that out. You're going to be like, man, their team is awesome at this, maybe not so good at this. And you'll start to align the coaching to the person who's best suited to provide it, as opposed to the hierarchy of so-and-so reports to so-and-so, so they get their coaching from so-and-so. The other thing it gives our supervisors and leads more time to do is it's going to analyze those calls that they are going to listen to and get them right to the heat of the action. It's going to pick some of the better calls for them to listen to and say, you know what, minute 131 is where you need to listen to this interaction. That's where the meat of the matter is. That's where things went either right or wrong, depending on the sentiment analysis that's running behind the scenes. It just makes them more effective as well. As leaders within your contact center. So I just wanted to mention that and double down on it, because you're right. It opens this whole new world of possibilities people aren't considering.
I think that's an important thing to double down on, Matt. And I would actually go as far as saying that for a lot of organizations, if they are not careful, their supervisors and their team leaders could be their most neglected demographic. Right, we've got a lot of things that are structured around developing and managing and leading agent performance. Often, if I'm in senior management, I've got other things that are available to me. But we've got these people, this group of people that, if we're not careful, just kind of get left to their own devices or are stuck focused on checklists or kind of these other tasks, and then it's easy to, I think, lose influence. So love what you mentioned in terms of developing coaches. All right, as we wind down here, we've got one more, and depending on what number 7 is, I might have a bonus tip for us, Matt. So bring it home. What's number 7?
Oh, this is in some ways the most important one. Not planning for care and feeding. The reality is that these tools need plans to close the loop, which you've already alluded to. You're going to learn all this stuff, but what are you doing to close the loop, right? What are you doing to make it better? How are you constantly evaluating how good these tools are? AI needs a plan. It will get better with time, but only if you're doing the right things to make it get better with time. So often in the contact center, if we look at historically technology acquisitions that occur in the contact center, they're one and done for the most part, right? You go out and maybe you get a CCAS solution, you get that all set up, you get your skills-based routing set up, and you're going to be tweaking your scripts and all that fun kind of stuff, but you're not really touching the technology as often as you need to do with these AI tools. I mean, they just require, I don't mean to say that to scare anybody away. I'm not saying you have to be a data scientist. And that's something you should be looking for, by the way, when you evaluate these tools, is how easy is it for you to do your own care and feeding as opposed to relying on professional services to do so. And also, what training do your people need to do that care and feeding? But that's a problem we see all the time, is people put things in, they work okay out of the gate, and then they get frustrated by them over time and maybe even abandon use cases or abandon the technology. And it's simply because they just didn't come in with a plan from day one to say, hey, this person's going to be spending a percentage of their time. It could be a whole new person. It could be your existing lead supervisors that get some upskilling, but they're going to be spending a percentage of their time looking at where it's going wrong, looking at where it's going right, and working with the vendors of those tools or a third party like a consultant like us to make those better over time. And I think that's just a place a lot of people are falling down today.
Yeah, Matt, this has been a challenge with self-service systems for a while. It takes me back. I'm going to date myself a little bit here, but I used to be fascinated with infomercials. and there was an infomercial in the US that ran a number of years ago for the Showtime rotisserie oven. Do you remember this
Yes.
one? What was the slogan for the Showtime rotisserie oven?
What is it? Set it and forget it, right?
Set it and forget it, right? This thing was so capable, you didn't have to do anything. Once you pressed what you wanted the outcome to be, it took care of itself. And we've seen organizations do this with self-service. They create a knowledge base, or they stand up a website, or they deploy an app, or whatever it is, and then they just let it be. They don't look at how well people are using it. They don't look at where people are falling down, right? They just let it be. And I think some people are a bit disillusioned, or maybe overly hopeful that with AI, you're going to be able to do this thing, and it's going to figure out for itself what the best thing is. And maybe someday it will, but for right now, to your point, we cannot take that approach of set it and forget it. We absolutely have to be involved, not just from a human in a loop standpoint, to actually understand, how do people want to be using it? What are the outcomes that it's driving? What are potential ways that this can be, using, that this can be driving benefit down the road? And I think ultimately for a lot of us as organizations, the real question we should be asking long-term is, how can we be more predictive and proactive in the way that we're serving our employees, we're serving our business stakeholders, that we're serving our customers, right? That, I think, is one of the greatest bits here, but it's gonna require us at some level to stay engaged in the process, in the delivery, from here. Matt, this has been fascinating, and I've appreciated you spending a little bit of time with us today to talk through some of these challenges that you're seeing organizations go up against. I think it's definitely giving us a lot to think about. Hopefully, for those of you watching, it's given you even just one thing to go back to your team and decide that you want to act on. Matt, for people who are just interested in learning more about you, your background, or Eclipse Telecom, what's the best way for people to get connected?
It's simple. www.eclipse-telecom.com. I'm Matt at eclipse-telecom.com. You can reach out to me there. Pretty easy to find on LinkedIn. So I'm concerned though, Justin. Are you ending on a cliffhanger? You said you might have a bonus tip for us, and now I'm like going to put you on the spot. I want to know. Or do we have to tune in next time?
Friend. Don't set it and forget it.
There you go. That's it. Hey, you and I are aligned then, brother.
I was like, maybe it's going to be a bonus. We were aligned, and
we are aligned.
I shouldn't have.
My brother from another mother over here.
I should have never had any doubt. But I'm glad you held me accountable for the bonus tip. But
I was excited.
I'm trying to make one more up. I don't have one on the spot.
I'll give you a cliffhanger, because I'm coming back hopefully someday here. I'll give you a cliffhanger.
All right,
we talked about a ton about people aren't happy with your chatbots. Another one I'll add in there is, you need to understand chatbot design frameworks. I don't know what else to tell people. We're designing these over to people that don't have a very specific skill set. There is an art and a science to designing chatbots, and understanding chatbot design frameworks. Go Google it. Go learn about it yourselves. Really, really important if you want to build successful chatbots. So maybe, Justin, at some point we'll get back on and talk about the exciting world of chatbot design frameworks.
Matt, I would be down for that conversation anytime. So we will definitely make it happen. Matt, I appreciate you. I'm thankful for the conversation we were able to have today. Everybody who's tuning in, thanks for watching the Contact Center Show. I'm Justin, founder and principal advisor at Metric Sherpa, and it has been great. I'm going to have to record that again. Dang it. I got to figure out what's going on.
You were so close.
All right. Thank you, CX Today team, for editing. We were so good. We got so close. All right. Matt, I want to thank you one more time for joining me on the Contact Center Show. For all of you who have watched along this episode, we appreciate you tuning in. I'm Justin Robbins, founder and principal advisor at Metric Sherpa, and I look forward to seeing you all back on another episode of the Contact Center Show. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.